What is up, people? It is Dave, Duncan Kyle back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Washington, D.C. rockers Caustic Casanova. The band's new album, Glass Enclosed Nerve Center, will be released on October 7th via Magnetic Eye Records. So, album number 5 from Caustic Casanova, which follows up 2019's God, How I Envy the Deaf, formed in 2005.
Yeah, I love that album.
Formed in 2005 as the trio consisting of drummer and vocalist Stephanie Zeichner, bass player and singer Francis Berenger, and guitarist Andrew Yonke, Caustic Casanova's chose a path to constantly refine their thrillingly unpredictable music. After a number of proudly DIY releases, Caustic Casanova caught the attention of Kylesa, who released the band's third full-length, Breaks, through their own label. Having brought their pure rock fury to the riff-thirsty masses on more than a dozen full and regional US tours, Caustic Casanova applied their road-honed chops to bang out a heavier, more joyously swaggering set of righteous songs for their 2019's triumphant album, God, How I Envy the Deaf. With the addition of second guitarist Jake Kimberly in 2019, the quartet set their sights on making the most adventurous and prog rock Caustic Casanova record yet. Glass Enclosed Nerve Center, fucking hell, underscores all their strengths while making the most of the expanded lineup that opened up their sound to new possibilities. The album was recorded and engineered by Jay Robbins at Magpie Cage, produced by Jay Robbins and Caustic Casanova, mixed by Andrew Schneider at Acre Audio, fuck's sake, mastered by Dan Coutant at Sunroom Audio, artwork designed by Scott Partridge. Jesus, that was a mouthful.
This is how it's pronounced now.
Acre, fuck me. Right, okay. Right, so I'd never heard of these guys before, and a couple of reasons I picked this. One, we've, like, the last month we've reviewed a ton of stuff, a lot of well-known bands, you know what I mean, your Machine Heads, Megadeth, Behemoth, Clutch, all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
I thought, like, for this week we're going to try and hit a few more kind of relatively unknown bands this week.
Oh, right. Is this in backlash to the internet saying they only review the big releases? Yes, we are Metal Hammer. Shills to our former selves. Not shining the spotlight at all on any bands that no one's listening to. I like it, Dave. Like, let's fight for the little man on this one.
So that was reason one. I'd never heard of them before, and I was like, 5 albums? I was like, what? Well, let's check these guys out. And secondly, I listened to one of the singles just to get a kind of gauge on what it was going to sound like. I was like, this sounds like it could be a Duncan band, and I might be completely wrong here. Might be completely wrong, but that was my initial thoughts. I was like, this could be up Duncan Street.
All right,
could be completely
right
wrong.
up there.
Duncan, what did you think? Is this a Duncan album, or was I completely way off on this?
You're a bit off, yeah. Not fully off. There is a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot to celebrate.
Okay.
There are some negatives, and I'm going to come to that. And these negatives are purely personal taste. Right. They're very good. They're very good at what they do. They're very good songwriters. The word quirky sprung to mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, quirky's a dangerous word, right? Let's just put that out at the front here. Quirky's a dangerous word because if you say some music is quirky, that's interesting. If your wife refers to your penis size as quirky, that's not a good thing, right? So I'm just saying that in the hands of the word, that is, in the hands of the person saying the word, it can take on a different meaning. And this is a quirky album. Quirky as in it's full of personality, right? It's got a lot of character about it. They are incredibly good at what they do, and every single song here is like its own wee story, which I really enjoyed. Now I say own wee story, that's maybe like short selling the length here. This is an album that starts off relatively concise and then like is basically an album at the end. The last 2 tracks collectively together are 30 minutes long, whereas the preceding 3 tracks are about 12 minutes, if that. So that's the first thing to say. So it's quirky, full of character. The songwriting is really, really good. I think the riffs are well played. I think it's well produced. I like the vocals. I like the fact that we have dual vocals here. I love the female melody. I think it actually works incredibly well with you. There's a kind of almost kind of snarly, kind of folky, punky thing going on with some of the melody cadences, which really, really works. Also works with the guitar playing. But then you get lulled into a false sense of security about how heavy the band is and how heavy they actually are. That makes sense. Because a lot of these tracks don't necessarily bare their teeth in their heaviness until way into a song, or, you know, only for small stabs without necessarily giving you everything fully. So it isn't until track 4, which is like 9 minutes long, I actually started to get an impression of how heavy these guys can actually take it. And it gets considerably heavier, specifically on the closing track. How long is that closing track?
22 minutes.
22 minutes or something, isn't it?
Right, yeah. Bull Moose Against the Sky rolls off the tongue. But like, the thing about it is, when listening to it, I don't feel its length, if that makes sense. It should, but it doesn't. And even the preceding track, which is the one I was talking about that bares its teeth a little bit, which is Shrouded Coconut, travels the, like, almost the full length of a song as an instrumental before it really switches things up as well. So I think it's well written. I think it's well recorded. I like the melody. I like the tone. My issue is I think they need someone in the room to tighten things up. It wanders a lot. And it wanders well played, but the wandering at times is a bit of a distraction. And I get that you only have to look at the artwork to get that they're a quirky band. And it's full of personality, and it's full of life, and it's full of colour, and you get that in there. But by the third listen, I was kind of like, right, I don't know if I actually really like this section in this song. But I really like this section. This one I wouldn't put here. But this is really cool. And this is now them hitting their mark, but I'm not too sure about... So yeah, I found myself maybe unfairly nitpicking certain things, but I think if you're going to make a track that's 9 minutes long, there's an art and there's a skill to that. I don't think they've fully mastered it. I think there are certain elements in this album where the full quirk swings in and it feels a little bit bloated for me. So yeah, I'll be brutally honest. I don't know if I will ever revisit this album again. Although I can completely appreciate what they do. It's not bad in any way, shape, or form at all. It's just not. It's not a Duncan album. I don't know where we're like. We're going to speak about this off air to try and work out exactly how the wires got crossed. There, but there's too many elements that go off in directions, which to me, maybe we work on a different song, but not on a track that's 22 minutes. So yeah, I found that like a bit distracting at times. So that is all I will say on Casanova. Didn't dislike it, but it's a bit too. It's not even avant-garde. That's not the right word. It's a bit too self-indulgent. It's a bit too self-indulgent for me.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Okay, let me try and shed some light on why I thought it might have been a Duncan album. As I say, I listened to one single beforehand just to
what one was
get
it,
an idea.
just out of interest?
I can't remember the name of the track.
Lodestar.
I can't remember what the name of the track was, but it was the one where that it doesn't matter. But anyway, I listened to a single and I was like, right, okay, this sounds quite interesting. I thought I knew, like, I had a kind of idea of what we were going to get from the album. Right. Wasn't prepared for the rest of the album. Not at all.
So had you listened to the rest of the album before you sent out, or was
No.
it just I've heard this single, it's quite interesting, I want to hear a whole album of that, and then you sat down and listened and you realised that it is one element, but it's one element of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
My first listen to this album was a mix of, oh, that's quite cool, and then into, what the fuck is going on there? So, and I kind of went back and forth on that. Like, stylistically, this ranges from stoner sludge to proggy posts noise punk rock or something. It's kind of wild. And when I finished the first play of the album, I honestly didn't know what to think of it. I was like, I didn't know if I liked it, I didn't know if I disliked it, didn't know what day it was. Totally discombobulated after that first listen to the album. And then one night when the rest of the fam were sleeping, it was about 1 a.m, and I was like, I'm gonna put that album on again. Because although I was still like really undecided about it, I was kind of intrigued to go back and listen to it again. So stuck it on again. Second listen was completely different for me. And I think it's probably because I was somewhat prepared this time.
100%, yeah.
I knew shit was going to get weird, but I was kind of okay with that. And once I kind of succumbed to the oddness that is Caustic Casanova, I began to appreciate it a lot more. I think this is an album that's got a lot of fun in it. Like it's a very, very unique sounding release. And what I kind of enjoyed about it is that although it's quite eccentric and quite peculiar in style, they somehow managed to keep you engaged, until one point in the album, which I'll come back to. And I think it's the balance. Like, although they have a very weird side, which, like, I'm talking like you're pulling influences from bands like the Melvins, Fugazi, like Les Claypool,
Mr. Bungle, like
Mr. Bungle,
out of fucking nowhere,
Boris, and then they have this other side which is more grounded, where they lean into this more kind of like, as I said, kind of stonery sludge sound, and you've got a kind of like Queens of the Stone Age, kind of Red Fang, almost, and even kind of newer stuff like our man the Bronze Age a little bit as well.
I could see why that would be appealing to Kylesa, so that to me makes sense, if you know what I mean, where they would hear them and go, right, we've got a label, we want a band that does that sort of stuff on there. And that's like when I heard those kind of moments, when I heard that on the single, that's what I was thinking. Duncan loves that kind of stuff. I'm now 100% following your train of thought.
You're feeling right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it derailed when the album came to me, but at this point, we're fully on the track.
Right, okay. And I think, like, from that kind of more kind of grounded side, you do get a little bit of respite, you can enjoy a kind of nice kind of heavy riff, and it's not quite as tangled, which I quite liked. It's also got a very kind of retro feel about it, I thought, as well. A lot of the more kind of like post kind of moments felt very 90s to me. Like a lot of the punk rock side of it sounded like it could be influenced by that era. It's also got some like 80s sounds and some of the prog licks, some of the vocal melodies as well. That track, Shrouded Coconut, huge 80s vibes on that, like rhythmically, also in the synth work as well. Fucking slap bass as well, which is like a huge thing in the 80s, like guys like Mark King. So a real melting pot of styles and ideas. After listening to it, I don't imagine this is going to be everyone's cup of tea. But I found quite a lot to enjoy in it. It's quite an album to fully digest because there's so much going on, and it takes a few spins for it to like fully kind of get in your head. But I did find that every listen I gave it kind of clicked with me a little bit more, and I felt myself going back to it. However, this is where I come to the negative part. It's only 5 tracks. Clocks in at like 44 minutes and something. And each track is fairly packed, especially the last track. So Bull Moose Against the Sky, right? Which, as I mentioned, about 22 and a half minutes. So you're talking like half the album is that one track.
Remember when Meshuggah released that single, 22 minutes long? It's kind of their version of that, right?
Catch 33. Was it Catch 33? I think it was Catch 33.
It's their version of Catch 33.
Was it that one or was it I?
I think it's I.
That was just a single track, so this is where I kind of struggled a bit. That track just kind of went way too far for me. Like, it had some cool moments on it, but I think it was, for me, I did feel like that track went a bit too kind of avant-garde. Starts completely a cappella, and then just kind of feels like it goes through every style possible. It kind of lacked a bit of the balance of some of the other tracks. It feels far more experimental. And like when a band like this goes experimental, shit gets a bit wild. I found it was like it felt completely intended. Like I felt like this track is supposed to be a complete and utter head wreck, even more so than the other tracks, and it just kind of lost me a bit. It didn't matter how many times I listened to it, I was just like, what is going on here? I think the transitions from style to style are kind of fairly well done. There are certain characteristics that appear throughout the track more than once. The more kind of ambient kind of guitar tones you hear popping up quite a few times.
Yep.
But there were certain segments of that track, it just felt in there to be kind of, it felt kind of like
quirky, Dave.
Yeah, quirky. It felt like it was being bizarre for the sake of being bizarre to me, and that didn't work for me personally. But out with the last track, which is half the album, I did enjoy this. I think there's so much personality on this album. Like they have got personality in spades, which I think it just comes across massively on the album. So I commend them for that. I think they stand out for a good reason. And I would 100% check out the next thing they release, because they are really fascinating for sure. Like a really interesting band. And musically, their playing skills, like they've got serious chops, like they really have, to be able to like encompass all those styles and be like that good at them. Like
if the Callous Dow boys went prog,
totally.
This wouldn't be that far off it, to be honest.
Totally, yep. Kyle, where are you landing with this one?
Album of the year. What's this? Strap the fucking right now. Bananas, giraffes. An aquarium.
Giraffe eating a banana. Oh, man. I mean, after the first spin, I was like, what the fuck did I just listen to? That was amazing. I was signed up. I'm not kidding. I was all the way in. Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Oh, you're not taking the piss.
Huh? No.
You are aware that, like, he's Kyle, I'm Duncan. See, when you heard this, you were thinking it's a Kyle album. Easy done, Dave. Easy done.
I mean, I know what you're saying, Duncan, about its quirk and how you'd be turned off by some of the parts of this, but man, I just love weird shit like this. The bands just go off in a fucking direction that's just crazy, but it works. It does. For me, it completely works. It's not like some weird bit of synth tacked on and it just sounds out of place. It's like, actually, no, I think that works a lot. You know what? This reminds me a little bit. I get the same feeling of watching those old Giallo films. It's just like sometimes there's just a weird fucking thing for no reason. It's just like, all right, there's a weird like synth stab in one of those films, and you know, where the fuck did that come from? Why is that there? Nothing happened. Or the rest of the score is like orchestral and something they go, and I was like, all right,
I can explain it for you, Kyle. Most of those scores were written independent before the movie happened.
Yeah.
And it was just too cheap to take it out. So like they wrote 7 songs, we'll use it here. But what about the weird synth stab that happens when guys are just sitting having coffee?
Yeah.
You don't really fuck with them.
But I love that. I think it's great. And this album had me smiling from ear to ear the whole way through. From like the almost surf rock intro on the first song, I was like, all right, cool. And then it gets really heavy. And that last song is 22 minutes long. Yeah. I'm just like, honestly, I looked at the runtime and I was like, I'm going to hate this, aren't I? But no, loved it. Not even kidding. Loved it.
It blows my mind that this album connected with you so quickly. Yet when you sat down and listened to Cripple Black Phoenix, that just didn't connect with you straight away.
I don't know what it was.
Like
the thing is, I've listened to Cripple Black Phoenix a fuck ton recently, and I love it now. And I wish we could. Can we go back and re-review that? Because I want to replace that video with. I love this album. Get out of here, Dead Z.
This to me, not to take pot shots at them, but once again, this reminded me of why that Cripple Black Phoenix album is so fucking good.
Yeah.
Every now and again, you just need someone in there saying, "Do we need this bit?"
Yeah.
Oh. They were actually talking in that interview. Interesting. You mentioned Suffer Rock there. Like when we were interviewing them, they openly said, "Yeah, there was a bit that we wanted to put in that had Suffer Rock, but we were vetoed out." You know, like that. Not in this fucking song. It was like, yeah, well, you know. So
I mean, sometimes it works.
Sometimes Caustic Casanova, they just continue on with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I only really got the surfer rock sort of feel in the first bit of the first song.
It doesn't carry on. Yeah, it doesn't
and
carry
maybe
on.
one little twig in that 22-minute fucking opus. Jesus Christ. This is staying in my rotation. I don't know if it'll end up at the end of year list, but I mean, I'm going to be coming back to this loads because it's a great time. It's really, really fun.
Awesome.
So some bands you're like, yeah, they're so fucking heavy and I love it, and it's 40 minutes of but this is just like, we're gonna have fun and we're gonna fucking love it, and we have a give a fuck attitude that we don't give a fuck.
See, this is why you don't bin every email that comes in. It's worthwhile listening, because just because it doesn't connect doesn't mean that one of us won't love it. So there we are.
True. Okay, so scores for Caustic Casanova, Glass Enclosed Nerve Center. Duncan, what are you thinking?
It's a 3. I appreciate everything that they're doing on the album. I just think if I was in the band, which I'm not, the band can clearly tell me to go and fuck myself with a rusty chainsaw, and I won't disagree with that. I think it's overdue, and the internet would agree. But to me, there's a role called a producer, and that producer sometimes focuses the things. I think that a little bit tidy up and a little bit more focusing, it would be more palatable to me. It's not to say that's not palatable to the fans of the band. And fair play to them, they're being them. And if only more bands were like that, the world would be a far more interesting place. So yeah, 3.
Nice. I will go up a little bit more. I'm going to go 3.5. I did eventually enjoy this first listen. I was like, really don't know. But I like the fact that they are just being them and just being like, well, listen, this is it. We don't give a fuck. Like, this is what we're going to sound like it, dislike it, whatever. And I kind of dug that. The 22-minute thing was a little bit too much out of my comfort zone. Like, I kind of struggled to get my head around that. But the other half of the album I really enjoyed. So I'm going to go 3.5. Kyle, what are you thinking?
See, I was going to come in at 3.5. Right. Really was. I was like, okay, this is a 3.5 album. But then they are a band after my own heart. And they have a generous use of cowbell. And I have to give them a 0.5 just for that, because it's fucking excellent. Yeah. I love cowbell, so that's it. 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5.
Nice. Nice. So yeah, Caustic Casanova, the new album drops on the 7th of October on Magnetic Eye Records. I'll put some links below. Be sure to check them out. There's a Facebook link, Bandcamp link. Have a listen. It's difficult to gauge on listening to one single. I'll tell you that right now. So give the album a listen. Try and listen to the whole thing and make your own mind up.
22-minute track, and at the end of that, if you're like, this is my jam, then the rest of the album you will love.
You'll probably love it, yeah.
Like, unabashedly. So.
Put it on toast.
Check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.